I'm Bryan Saint. I'm a magician, voice actor, and magician again.
So, Bryan, for over 20 years, you've spent your life entertaining and performing all over the country. Your live magic shows have made you nationally, even internationally recognized. You've had TV appearances with NBC, Fox, and the CW. You even had the prestigious opportunity to fool the legendary Penn Teller. I'm excited to sit here with you and hear a little bit about your incredible journey as a magician. Tell me, what was life like growing up?
Um, yeah, I was an only child, so I had to. My dad would very often, we would play out in the yard, baseball, that kind of stuff. But I learned very early on that what I had to do was find ways to entertain myself. Without a brother and sister around, really sharing was not a thing. So it was basically my time was whatever I wanted to do, within reason. So I found myself having a lot of interest as a kid.
Who were some people that inspired you growing up?
Um, People I personally knew, or people out in the entertainment world.
It could be either.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll say for early on, a lot of my inspirations came from music. Um, you know, Probably the first thing I ever really watched was Sound of Music as a kid. So that was a big thing. Music influenced me a lot when I was growing up. Um, Dick Van Dyke, that was very oddly was a big inspiration, even though I didn't piece that together until much later. I had teachers, substitute teachers in school that actually called me Dick Van Dyke for a nickname, and I had no idea why, and I realized why later on. The Music Man, the original Music Man, I believe that I was Robert Preston. I believe I am Robert Preston reincarnated. The fact that we actually lived at the same time for a few years, that just shows you how much more significant that is.
Nice. How did this love for magic start? How was that journey?
My dad showed me little tricks. My dad had a big interest in magic and just kind of pursued it as a hobby. He bought one of those TV magic sets, the big ones. And I stumbled on it at an early age. He showed me a couple of tricks out of there. And then at age 6, my dad was a teacher, and a substitute teacher that filled in for my dad every now and then was a magician at night. He magician by night. So he would go to restaurants and he would perform up close. And so my dad took me, my mom, my grandparents. We went to a restaurant in Charlotte. I saw a magician for the first time doing amazing stuff. And of course, that really was where I got bit by the bug. And in that moment, I remember just thinking, I have no idea how I will ever do what he was doing, but I just knew I wanted that in some way.
Nice. And what kind of magic are you personally drawn to most?
It has changed so much over the years. My early inspiration was David Copperfield. And seeing him do things like making the Statue of Liberty disappear or so, and would think to myself at an early age, man, I want to do that. And how that has so drastically changed as I've gotten older. I love the close-up style of magic. That's has been primarily what I've learned to do. I kind of approach magic from a bit of an honest perspective. So in other words, that I'm not making something actually disappear. So why would I tell you that? So I try to tell you things throughout my performance that are 100% true. So it's very difficult to decode what I'm doing if you can't automatically pick out what the lies are. So it's maybe I'm an oddball when it comes to that, but that's kind of my approach to it.
I'll say David Copperfield, you mentioned earlier. Still to this day, for me personally, that was the most incredible show that I got to see. This was back when he was still touring, around the U.S. I know he's got a Vegas show now, but yeah, just an awesome show.
It's that I think every magician can say that they were influenced by David Copperfield, even if they didn't know they were influenced by him. They were more than likely influenced by another magician who was influenced by David Copperfield. So I think every performing magician at this right now has been influenced by David Copperfield in some way.
Yeah. So tell me about your first time experience being on stage in front of a live audience performing. What was that like?
Performing magic or first time on stage performing?
First time performing.
Okay. Terrifying. I think I actually kind of narrowed this down last year because my wife and I, coming back from an event I was doing, we made a stop at a camp where I went as a summer camp I had gone to, and got to take a look at the campus. Hadn't seen it in, more years than I want to admit to. And they said the auditorium was open. I went in there and got to see, I pointed to my wife. I said, this right here, I believe this is the first stage I was ever on where I had a line that I had to say. And man, this is going to be crazy that this is on camera. And we've discussed that you're not going to edit this whatsoever. So I want you to know that my chief goal in this video is to make you have to edit something out. So like I am set on this goal. But I was Steve Urkel in this little skit when I was probably second or third grade age. I was actually Steve Urkel on stage, and I had to say a few lines that I'm not going to say here because there's no way my voice will do that. But I remember being up at the mic, and I could hear my own heartbeat. And when that was over, I thought, that's great. I never have to go on stage again.
Nice. You always strive to give people something they don't expect. Why is that so important with your acts?
I like people to learn things, a couple of big inspirations to me now, Penn Teller. I've heard Penn say, when you get fooled by a magician at an early age, the ones who become magicians, what's going on is that you want to chase that feeling of being fooled because you really like to be fooled. I love to see something that really blows me away, something I really don't know how to do. But the problem is, I've been performing on stage for 20 years and then done this as a hobby for 10 more years on top of that. So I've learned so much over the years that it's so hard to, it's not something that's very common for me to get fooled from what I see. So I think what I'm trying to do is I'm always trying to find the next thing that I can do. I always try to improve my show just to give the audience something, because I think in some ways I'm kind of seeing the show through their eyes. That may sound really cliche, but I think that's kind of what I'm doing. So I'm always trying to chase that feeling of creating the next best thing, or just giving them an experience that they can really leave there. And instead of just saying, we saw a magician, they get to leave the theater or wherever they're seeing me. They get to leave and say, we were there the night that this thing happened. And I think that's a much more exciting thing for an audience to do.
Talk about some of your most embarrassing moments on stage.
Oh, so this is what we're going to edit out. Okay, let's do this. And I know we talked about a friend of mine before we rolled the camera, and a big mistake. I won't reveal that one. But my Probably my biggest actual mishap on a stage is I was doing a show, and 10 minutes into the show, as I used to put my case, used to just work out of a case on stage. My case was behind me, and it was in an X-folding keyboard stand. You know what I'm talking about. So you lock the keyboard stand into place. I would have it about like here, put my case on top of it, have the case open, and just work out of there. That case was behind me. I had a girl on stage next to me, and I'm 10 minutes into the show. I hear an unbelievable sounding crash behind me. And because there are other mics on the stage, it is amplified to an enormous degree. I turn around. Well, I should point out, before I turn around, when that thing crashed, I watched every prop that I know was in that case literally shoot forward like a wave from the ocean. Props shoot into the first 8 rows of the audience. And what had happened was my case, apparently, my stand had not locked into place. I had it the right distance, or I had the right setup. I just did not make sure it was locked. So it literally did this, and my case fell straight down. Every prop, we're talking 40 to 50 props, at least small props, shooting into the audience. And in that instant, without turning around, I said, and just so all of you know, because the audience is like, oh my gosh, just so you know, after this trick, we usually take about a 5-minute intermission, and the crowd fell apart laughing. Like, really, I mean, it was the best thing that could have happened in that show. And then as they were laughing, I turned around to survey the damage, and there was damage. There was my case. My case was empty. It was amazing. Like, I don't think I could have emptied the case if I'd turned it upside down. This case was completely empty, and there were no props on the stage. They were all in the audience. I don't know. I wonder if someone ran behind me and did it, but a guy was recording the show, and I had him show me. I have yet to get that footage. That was 10 years ago, at least 10 years ago. But he showed me what it looked like on camera, and sure enough, it fell. And that was a big lesson to me that day, because once I retrieved everything, the band that was playing before I went on, these really nice guys, they just took off into the audience, helped me gather all the props, and once the show resumed, it was kind of a thing where I said, well, what's the worst that could happen? There is nothing that could happen, within reason, with me still being alive afterwards, that would be worse than what just happened. So I called back to it several times in the show, made jokes about the case falling. And I had at least a dozen people come up to me after the show. In that show, I'd taken so many more chances than I would normally take. I would make funnier jokes, because I didn't care at that point. My case fell. It's not like I have to maintain this brave, I'm smooth. I don't have to maintain that front. I had at least a dozen people come up to me after the show and say, I have to book you for an event coming up, and I just want to make sure you do the case thing every show. No, I don't. Well, for the right amount of money, maybe. But I would say that as far as mess ups, that's probably the worst.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of trailing off of that, comedy is something that's really important.
Big.
Why is that?
A lot of my inspirations have been comedy. And not just comedy, but kind of the brutally honest, sarcastic comedy. I mean, my show's 100% clean. It's really anybody can attend. It is a show for adults, but you can have kids there. It's fine. But my show is, it's clean. But all my inspirations for comedy have been the guys who are just very brutally honest, and very, as I said, very sarcastic. As far comedians, Brian Regan, is a big one that I like to watch. John Cleese, just in how he's just as much of an actor, he's also a writer, and just the things that he writes, and listening to him in interviews, talking about his process and why things are funny, and to me, maybe it's also an ego thing, but when I'm on stage, I need that feedback. So when I'm not doing magic, silence can be a bit terrifying. If you have an enormous audience in front of you, there's something in your mind that says, well, there should be noise coming from this many people. So when there's not noise coming from that many people, it can be intimidating. So I think that comedy kind of helps break up those moments of silence. So that's probably why comedy has been a big thing over the years.
Gotcha. Now, you had the chance to perform on the season finale of Penn Teller's Fool Us. Tell me about that experience and how all that played out.
I should say, before I went on the show, the very first thing that I had to come to terms with is I'm not going on the show to fool them. I actually auditioned, people don't know this, I auditioned for the season before I was on. I auditioned for season 4 and auditioned with a card trick. And it's a card trick that I do if I attend magic conventions. If you don't know what a magic convention is, it is nerdier than a sci-fi convention. It's a bunch of magicians hanging out, showing each other card tricks, which is exactly what it's about as much fun as it sounds like it would be. It's fun for me, it's fun for other magicians, and that's about it. Some other magicians. But I did a trick that I do at conventions that a lot of magicians are really, not all of them are fooled, but a lot of them are surprised when they see it. It's a cool trick. So I said, I'll take this on there. And my goal was to fool Penn Teller. But it was right up until the moment that I was, I'd been sent the email saying, yes, we're booking flights right now for performers. You were in the runnings to be on the show. It sounded great. And then at the last second, I was not on the show. So that hit really hard at the time. Now I'm thrilled that I was not on, because that trick, had I done that trick on the show, so much would not have happened after that show. We probably wouldn't be talking right now, because there was just nothing exciting about what I would have done had I gotten on season 4. I took this thing, a friend of mine, I had a couple of consultants helping me with this, and one of them, who had written for David Blaine, saw my routine. I'd spoken to my first consultant, showed him my trick with the phone charger, and he said, that's exactly the kind of thing that you should do. And then it was a guy who is a big consultant, writes for a lot of top magicians, and he said, this should be an infomercial. You should make this an infomercial. I know you've seen the routine. I told him, no way. It wasn't my style. He said, well, no, so I really think that's what you should do. You should do the acting on stage, and then you can hire a professional voice actor to do the voice. And the second he said that it was about as mind blown as I could be. I said, well, I am a voice actor. That's what I do. And then he went crazy, I went crazy, and then it just became this, let's find how we can make this a thing. So it was one of the fastest routines, scripting-wise, that I've ever written. It was so easy to put together because it was basically us making fun of the stereotypical infomercial and voiceover and, things that you hear that you don't think about. The on-hold voice. You don't think of, there's actually a human being that recorded this thing saying, we appreciate your patience. Please continue to hold. You don't think about the actual human doing that. So we wanted to just give people that weird visual of what this might look like. And, flying to Vegas and working with that team. And I've said it before, I will say it again. I don't know, who knows what I'll be on from this day going forward. If there will be a lot of TV shows, a few, maybe none. But I will never find, in my opinion, I will never find a team of people that will work harder, that has worked harder. This team did everything in their power to make sure that I looked good. They treated me like a rock star from the moment I stepped off the plane. There was a car to pick me up, take me to the hotel. The people were there that said, "Oh, hey, it's so great to finally meet you," and all these people that I've been interacting with over email for a long time. And then when I fooled Penn Teller, when they actually, said, we have no idea, they gave me the trophy, I walked off stage. I stood in the wings and they were making sure, okay, do you need any more shots from him? Okay, you're good. They unmiked me. I walked backstage. Everyone that worked behind the scenes was standing backstage at the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas cheering for me when I walked off stage. And it's like, I wish that was videoed as well. I want that because the whole process, the nicest people, most professional people, and really all they care about is making you look good on TV. And, hats off to them and to Penn Teller for wanting to do a show like that. Because if you watch the show, you'll notice no matter what, Penn Teller, they don't say negative things towards the performers. And that was one of the things Penn said that they wanted to get away from. They want a show where you get great magicians on, and whether they're fooled or not, Penn will say something nice about everybody on that show. And I just think that's fantastic. They're just renewed for another season. This will be 9 seasons. I believe that's the right number. 9 seasons of two of the best magicians in the world, complimenting hundreds of magicians from around the world. It's just a great show.
Now, being a voice actor also, you got to intertwine that with your talent as a magician, but you got to intertwine it with being a voice for an act on AGT.
That's true. Yes.
Tell me about that experience.
So, a good friend of mine, I won't say his name because you can Google his name and find out, but he wears a mask on stage, so you don't see who he is. He was on AGT, or excuse me, he was on France's Got Talent. And if I'm not mistaken, won France's Got Talent as himself. And then the following year, he came back on France's Got Talent as, but you didn't know it was him. This new character came on with a hood named Klek Intos, and this very deep, dark sounding voice. It sounded like Jigsaw from the Saw movies, I think I'm playing the tape. That's why I'm holding. I don't know what I'm doing. But it sounds like, it sounds like that. A very deep voice. He did his whole act, and he made it through all the way to the final show. I believe the final show or semifinals. He did his final performance, and facing away from the crowd, his name, the last name, Intos, E-N-T-O-S, appeared on the screen above him, and he took his mask off and the letters rearranged to spell his real last name. And then he took the mask off, turned around, and everyone saw, the judges saw, it's the guy who won the previous year. And this huge Uh, Huge response. I mean, nothing but positive from everything I've seen. Well, he said, oh, we're going to do America's Got Talent, and we need an American voice to do this. Can you do it? And I said, absolutely. I mean, I can't find any reason why not to do that. So I recorded with him maybe 4 different tricks. Only 2 made it to TV. But there was one I really wanted to get on TV, but I believe it was the network executives. I think that's who kind of gave that idea the thumbs down. It was a specific trick that I believe he did on France's Got Talent. So, you may not understand everything that's being said since it's all in French. But, I recommend people to go and watch that act on France's Got Talent and really see all the things he did. Really an incredible act. But it was just a lot of fun, to turn on AGT and see this really creepy act and know that voice is mine. And it's great because, you go to YouTube and you look at the comments on YouTube and people say, clearly this man is demon possessed because listen to the voice. So they asked me to repent and I did. So
you really love to connect with your followers on social media. You contribute part of that, your success to having a open network like that?
I mean, to a degree. The thing that you won't see me do, I mean, people who follow me on social media, I won't be political on social media. I won't post things that I know are going to be controversial. It's very hard to avoid everything because you can say one thing. I told a joke on social media one time, a really, really funny joke. Got a great response from a lot of people. And the word cemetery is in the joke. It's said one time in the joke. And I literally had a person pop up there and say, this joke is extremely offensive. Or the word cemetery, excuse me. It said the word cemetery is extremely offensive. One of my relatives just died and I was just in a cemetery. So you should take this joke down. I wasn't talking about your relative, I promise. I mean, the joke is so off the wall, abstract. Like no one else had any problem with it, but the one person did. So it's hard to, especially now, just go through this life without offending somebody. But, I try to stay as far away from the controversy as I can on social media. If I see someone post something, sometimes I just have to step away if I disagree. More than likely, I will snooze them for 30 days just because, you know what? Hey, I'm putting them in detention. I just don't tell them about it. So.
What's your family think about all of your magic stuff?
My family, they have always, my parents always very supportive because they knew my dad frequently talked about, my timing being on stage, even though I was terrified of audiences. He saw something very early on, just, in learning my first few magic tricks at age, 6 years old. Just how I did those magic tricks, things I said, and how I would turn to show something. He saw something early on with me, and they've just always been very supportive of the fact that this is weird, but they've been very supportive. I think my dad, he got it first, really understood it first before my mom fully grasped it. My mom, she works a job. I'm just remembering we're not editing things. My mom works a job. And she my dad kind of had his own businesses, here and there. Not really big companies or anything like that, but he had his own little business ventures that he did, whereas my mom mainly worked a job. So I think my dad kind of understood me going out in the world. My dad's also a piano player, a very good piano player, and did, played in restaurants, played at, private functions, things like that for a long time. So he understood the entertainment side of it. I think my mom, I don't think she could possibly be prouder of how this has turned out. She is, when we'll discuss a few things like, yeah, I just booked a show doing this, and she'll be surprised, and I'll be surprised too, so they're very supportive. They're very happy. And, I think there's still that little bit of surprise, because I still have that surprise myself, where I'm like, good grief, this is like, I'm actually doing this. And I really hope I don't lose that.
It takes a long time to really perfect your craft as a magician. You got to have a lot of patience and a lot of dedication. Talk just a minute about that,
I heard Steve Martin say recently, and in his master class, actually, I wanted to see his thoughts on writing, and he says something to the effect of, he's like, I can tell you I was not good. I absolutely was not good. I just tried more things than anybody else. And I really see myself in that. If I look back over 20 years of doing this in front of an actual audience, I say that case falling was the biggest failure. That's the biggest failure I want to share. That's the most visceral failure, I think. But I had a lot of things that did not go well on stage. A lot of things that didn't go well up close. I've tried, someone recently even asked, said, how many tricks would you say you've tried? Because you've clearly done your homework. You've done the work. How many have you tried? So would you say hundreds? And almost emotionally, when I was asked, I said thousands, because I literally could think back to the number of, when I did restaurant magic, I did 30 restaurants over 14 years. That was my total number was at least 30 restaurants. And, sometimes being in restaurants 5 nights a week. And really, it wasn't just a matter of learning how to perform the tricks, learning the sleights. It was a matter of learning the audience. Being able to pick out, who am I going to use for this trick? If I've got someone who is clearly not interested, or someone who is trying to figure everything out, if I've got kind of a bold, if I got a trick that's going to have a bit of a bold move in there that they have to follow instructions on, knowing I got to stay away from this person for this one trick. When I'm on stage, the first 5 minutes of the show is one trick. It's the same trick I've opened with for probably 19 years. And in that trick, here's what I'm doing the whole time. There are all these brief pauses from magic moments and then jokes. And I will do these moments, and then I will look in the audience, and I'm specifically looking for who's going to help with the card trick 30 minutes from now, who's going to help with whose watch am I going to take? And I say, okay, this person's got a watch and they're laughing. Great. Okay. I'm looking for that. Learning to, I don't want to say judge the audience, but, recognizing patterns in my audience and in individual people, that was just as much of a learning experience as the magic itself.
Someone who wants to be a magician, what advice would you give them?
Don't pick a favorite type of magic yet. Learn it all. Learn how people float on stage. Learn how someone makes a space shuttle disappear, in front of an audience. and then learn how you can put two rubber bands together and pass one through the other one. You know, learn it all. Every little piece of magic you can learn, I think, is so important, because then you can find how you can apply things from smaller tricks to bigger tricks and vice versa. You can really learn how to weave all this stuff together, and you find what your favorite type of magic is. And I think that's how, I think that's a big part of what helped me is, my early days, like I said. I mean, big tricks, watching David Copperfield fly on stage, watching him make it snow on stage. He appeared in a motorcycle, doing these things. I think just not putting limitations on yourself in the beginning is the best way to go about it. Even if you can't afford to, buy an appearing helicopter, for the stage. I mean, they do exist. If you can't afford that, well, that's fine. But if you can learn about it, learn everything you can.
Would you say also having a support group of others that are sharing the same passion?
Yes,
is important as well.
Yes, we have two groups really close to here. One group is for the hobbyists, that just want to, come by and say, hey, I learned a new trick, and they show it, and they get a pat on the back, and it's great. And if they want to, talk about, I'm learning this trick, do you know how to do this little move or something? And they may do that. And then we have another group in Charlotte, and we meet every week. The other group meets once a month. This other group that I'm a part of, we meet every week. And we'll dig deep into every trick. And we'll tell people, and anybody new, it's invitation only to be a part of this, but we'll tell everybody who comes there, hey, listen, we're not going to sugarcoat this. If we love something that you're doing, we're going to tell you we love it. If we don't like something, we're going to tell you we don't like it. But we're not going to say we just hate that and leave. We're going to say, I really hate this part. Let's see if we can make it better, or replace this little part with something that's going to be better for you ultimately. This doesn't fit your character, or this doesn't look right in your hands. Let's see if we can change that. So I think having that support group, if you can't get a big group of people, if you can't get 10 to 15 people, having two friends, having one friend even who's interested in magic, allows you to bounce things back and forth off of each other, because you'll say something that'll spark an idea with them. Then they'll say something that'll spark an idea with you, and it just keeps on doing this until you can take one simple trick and make it something that, that far exceeds anything that you would have come up with on your own.
Nice. What's the future of Bryan Saint?
If I can keep doing what I'm doing now, that's a great future for me. I don't really set heavy expectations. I do set goals, and one thing that I've done over my lifetime is when, I've had a lot of hobbyist magicians who have told me, I did this full time for a while, and realized it was just a dead end road. And he said, and I have them frequently will say to me, there's going to be a day when you just decide you don't want to do magic anymore, because you just realize you can't make a good living doing magic. I'm holding my breath, because so far that hasn't been the case. But if I can just keep doing what I'm doing now, I've, without just shutting people out, I set goals for myself. And if people say that I can't do, if I can't do this one goal that I want, that's fine. We'll see. We'll see if you're right, So the future of me is just, I'm going to keep doing what I love doing. If I can do more of what I love doing, that's great too, you know. But hey, if I can, continue to perform like I'm performing now, that's a big thumbs up for me.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, I just got one last thing to ask. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
You said this to me before, and I had no answer, and I still have no answer.
That's all right.
It's wow, a legacy. All right, here's something cliche, but this will. I think this really does say though what I want to say. If I had to pick something, a friend of mine years ago, there was a trick I did at the end of my show that kind of left a bunch of trash on the stage, and he said, always, always, always clean that up before you go. Even if there's a janitor there that's coming to clean it, if there is, hey, give them some money when they're, tip the janitor who's sweeping this huge mess up. And he said, the reason is always leave the stage as good or better than it was when you got there. So I think for me, just, I like the idea of leaving it better than before you were there. So if the people I interact with, if I can leave a lot of them, if their experience, if life ends up being even just a fraction of a percent better because somehow we cross paths at one point, then I'm all about that. There is way too much negative right now about everywhere you look. I don't watch the news. I'll be honest. It's not a big interest to me. I get enough of the news scrolling through my Facebook feed. Well, kind of, I guess, if that's really the news. But there's just too much negative going on. So if I can just, leave a positive impact. I mean, hey, I grew up in a Christian home. I'm not always in a place where I can push my faith on groups of people. They don't really care for that in the corporate world, but you know what? I can at least be as positive of a person. I can at least be as positive of a person as I possibly can be. That's what I'm shooting for. If people can if they can leave the theater saying, wow, I'm in a better mood than I was before I got here. That's all I'm going to ask for right now.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and let's still edit this.